जननी देवी रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयोश्रित्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः। नमः श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानंदसूरये सच्चित्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपा तमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं। वीरेश्वरानन्ददयामृताब्धिं श्रीरङ्गनाथं च विज्ञानभानुं चिदानन्दरूप श्रीपुरुषोत्तमार्यं ध्यायन् हृदिस्थान् कृतिनं ह्यवैमि। Honorable Governor of Kolhapur Rotary District, beloved office bearers in the Secretariat of the Governor, Dr. Girish Masurkar, who is instrumental in making me participate in this momentous and historic program and have an opportunity to address you all today, and all other beloved Rotary members and friends. It gives me immense pleasure to be with you today. It's an opportunity for me that not only that I am spending a few of my most precious moments with you all, but also I have had an opportunity to share some of my thoughts. Churning, intellectual churning, is a very noble process. It's a very important process also. It has tremendous significance in the national life of any country. The first ever convocation address in the history of man we come across in Taittiriya Upanishad. In that Upanishad, there are several exhortations for the students who have just then completed their graduation and about to retire to their houses and assume some social and public responsibilities associated thereof. At that moment, the university authorities of those times, they feel a bit of motivation is necessary for these people. And we see a beautiful talk that is aimed at motivating these graduates. In the course of that talk, that beautiful discourse, we see Swadhyaya Pravachanabhyam na pramatitavyam. Churning, intellectual churning, my dear friends, should never be given up. You must always be sincerely and wholeheartedly seeking truth. There have to be some commitments for you in your life. And the greatest of all these commitments is you must always pursue truth. Truth is the greatest thing you must consider in your life. For nothing truth can be sacrificed. But for the sake of truth, you must ever be ready to sacrifice anything and everything. The first thing and the foremost thing that you need to be committed to is truth. And next in the order of preference is righteousness. And third is intellectual pursuits. Always churn the data that you collect. So much of information will be received by you every day. So many phenomena are taking place in this nature. So much of observation is going on. The whole universe itself is a great laboratory. So many incidents take place in the human world around. So many things will be taking place, pleasant and unpleasant. Remember, all these are the experiments that are going on in the laboratory of this human world. And every incident has a message for you. Be sensitive enough to understand this message. Be sensitive enough to grasp this message. Then only your intellectual faculties become sharpened. You will have tremendous power to grasp, to decipher the language in which the nature is speaking to you. Only such people who can decipher the language of nature, only such people, only such sensitive minds who can read through various incidences and try to catch the true pulse behind all such phenomena alone are the salt of the earth. That is the message that has been given to these students in that wonderful intellectual gathering. Newton lived like that. Siddhartha lived like that. Sir Isaac Newton lived like that. Siddhartha, who later became Buddha, lived like that. That is why it was possible for Newton to sense that message that the process of apple falling to the ground was sending towards him. He sensed it. Apple fell down. It is a most insignificant incident for us because we are laymen. Our senses are not sensitive enough. We cannot penetrate into the inside of the process, inside of a phenomenon, and try to read the message that that phenomenon is sending out. It is a paltry, a mere phenomenon that apple has fallen down. But for Newton, there was a great message. Why it fell down, why it did not move sidewards, why it did not move diagonally, why it did not move upwards. There are so many things that move up. In fact, air itself moves up. Water falls down. A piece of paper can move even sideways. Probably air was blowing at the time apple fell down. When air is blowing, naturally the lighter particles will move in the direction of the air. Let us say air was blowing at the time apple fell down. Apple also could have traced the same path that air did, but it fell specifically. It made it a particular point that it should fall down, and it fell down. It is a very, very ordinary process, ordinary incidents. For us, Newton sensed something. It paved the way for the discovery of Newton's laws of motion that are the main principles behind the whole of the automobile industry that we see, that we witness in today's world. Any motion, be it the motion of a rocket, be it the motion of an aeroplane, be it the motion of a satellite, be it the motion of anything, the whole of the automobile industry, train, bus, car, etc. The whole movement, the whole of this industry is being governed by Newton's laws of motion, the womb for which was the apple falling down, a paltry, a very insignificant, just like that process. Just like that process for vague minds, blunt minds. But for a sensitive mind, that was a process that did dig into the secrets of nature, whereby this beautiful philosophy of gravitation was unfolded. This is how the intellectual prowess of a man can revolutionize the whole world. This is on the side of the physical science. Let me come on to the side of the spiritual science. Siddhartha saw a dead body. Siddhartha saw a sick man. He saw an old man. It is nothing for us. Any number of dead bodies we see, any number of sick people we come across, any number of old people also we come across. But for a sensitive mind like Siddhartha, it had a message which later paved the way for the discovery of the great Buddhism that revolutionized the whole world, the then civilized world, from Egypt to Japan for more than 1000 years. It brought about a revolution in the world of man of those times. Why I told all these things, sensitive minds must always engage themselves in a process, a very, very important process that is called as intellectual churning. Today, we all have gathered together for one such process, an intellectual churning. The subject matter for today's program is what is the relevance of service in one's life. One must train oneself in the process of being looking beyond looking one's own self. I must train up myself in that great culture of looking beyond my own self. My own psychophysical setup that I am is not the be all and end all. Strictly speaking, spiritually speaking, this is just a grass body through which I am functioning. This is not my whole being. This is just an instrument, just a medium through which I am functioning. What you see as the gross body is just a tip of the iceberg, million times greater than the tip. There is that huge mass of iceberg inside, beneath water, which is not visible, but which is very much there. Because the iceberg is there within the mass of the water, the tip is able to be seen. We are able to see the tip only because the huge mass inside is balancing itself in such a way that the tip is being visible. If there were no mass at all, huge mass at all, inside that water mass, this tip would not have been seen at all. Like that, there is a huge ocean inside me. A limitless world is there inside me. That is that real me. That is wonderful. The energy of that is inexhaustible. The glory of that is indescribable. The boundary of which cannot be seen anywhere around. It is absolutely limitless. Indian philosophy describes the world within me. It describes the real me as something that has got an absolute existence. Its existence is never threatened. That is absolute existence. And its knowledge is limitless, absolute knowledge. And its joy, its bliss is absolute, it is limitless. To sum up my glory, I can use these three adjectives. That is, I have an absolute existence. That's what I want. If anybody can give me something whereby the longevity of my life can be increased, I'll be the happiest person to consume it. We are all after that. Everybody, especially during these days of pandemic, corona pandemic, health is the most precious thing. We want to see that our earthly existence is never disturbed. We want to see that our existence is as glorious as it used to be before any such pandemic actually pounced upon this mankind. So we are all concerned with the existence, the unthreatened existence of us. Remember, the real me has as its birthright, its inherent glory is that it is absolutely existing. Its existence is absolute. It is never threatened. The real me has got absolute knowledge. The real me has got absolute bliss. My body doesn't have absolute existence. My body doesn't have absolute bliss. My body doesn't have, or my brain doesn't have that absolute intellectual ability, absolute knowledge. But me, the real I have got. But unfortunately, for reasons not relevant for today's context, that vast I, that limitless I have on my own, I have desired it to be confined to my body and my mind. This is the philosophy behind every living being, every being for that matter. I have desired, voluntarily I have made my situation in such a, I have put myself in such a situation whereby the infinite I, the absolute existence, the absolute bliss and the absolute knowledge, which is infinite really, that infinite I have loved to be confined to my body-mind complex. That is my own making. It's an ignorance, it is a tragedy, but most of the times, because of our ignorance, we invite tragedies. It is tragedy can be known to us only after the tragedy has taken place. When we are at the fag end of the miseries that are born of the tragedy, then only we come to understand that the process that we initiated, the process that we entered into is a tragedy. I should have known that I was doing a blunder long ago at the time of my beginning this task itself. But unfortunately, I loved it. I welcomed that. I initiated that process. Now the process has assumed such an ugly proportion, I come to know that it was tragic on my part that I ever initiated myself at all into such a process, not knowing that one day it would turn out to be a great tragedy. Like that absolute nature of mine, I have desired, once upon a time I desired that it should confine itself to a body and a mind, and therefore I appear before you as a psychophysiological entity that is called as Swami Nirbhayananda, and you are all equally confined into that limitation and known by the sort of the name that you bear, the name and the form that you bear as your specific coordinates. Dear friends, this is the tragedy with man. How to overcome this? You can overcome that only when you train up yourself in that great culture of looking beyond your own self, looking beyond your own psycho-physiological entity. Train up yourself. It is not an easy thing. Siddhartha had trained himself up a lot in that culture. That is what that ultimately made him a world-renowned Buddha. Newton also, at least in a partial sense, had trained himself up. He must have emphasized in this training that intellectual aspect, and therefore he became a scientist. Buddha might have emphasized himself upon that spiritual process of this great phenomenon, and therefore he became a saint, a spiritual giant. But remember, each and every human being, a sensible man, must always involve himself in this most relevant, most important, most significant process of looking beyond one's own conventional self. That I am one Swamiji is a conventional sense. That you are all Rotary members, you are businessmen, you are doctors, you are engineers, you are high-placed officers. They are all you in a conventional sense. The real you is infinite. I cannot fix any name to it. I cannot fix any form to it. It's beyond name and form. So, it assumes all the significance, because who does not want absolute existence? You want to have absolute existence, then look beyond yourself. You want absolute knowledge, look beyond yourself. You want absolute bliss, look beyond yourself. Looking beyond oneself is the only criterion or the only requirement, only prerequisite whereby you can shatter all these limitations and fly into the limitless horizons that is your real you, real I. What a great process, what a great education, what a great benefit, what a great profit. Who does not want? We all want. We all want. But many people don't know how they are all limited into that pleasant cage. We all have arrested ourselves in this golden cage, what we call as this I, the present I. That in Indian philosophy we call as Vedanta, Aham in Vedanta. In Indian philosophy, this limited I, this corrupt I is called as Aham. The real I is Atma. The I that has got absolute knowledge, bliss and existence is Atma. That is my potential being, the real I. But that is not experienceable right now. I want to experience it. What greater glory is there than that? If for the sake of a paltry education, I can spend 15 years, 20 years in my life just to become a doctor or an engineer, whereby my glory is not infinitely expanded, infinitely multiplied, why should I not spend or invest the whole of my life in the process of realizing the infinite dimension that is so natural to me, that I need not acquire, that is something innate in me. So therefore, Indian culture says, Adhyatma Vidya Vidyanam. The real education is spiritual education, an education that enables you to realize, to experience these absolute parameters that are always attached to you. Friends, there are so many ways whereby we can experience this great glory, that is being absolute in terms of existence, knowledge and bliss. Service is one such way. Service is one such a training. You are all interested in service. Rotary people have got that great reputation of having been involved in so many service activities. The whole India should be grateful to you today, because it's because of you, the Rotary fraternity, that polio has been eradicated out of the borders of India. What a menacious thing it was. What a challenge it was. How it was simply sweeping off the peace of so many parents, because their children used to be very frequently polio hit. India was one of the worst victims of this polio. When the Rotary people took it very seriously that this menace should be eradicated out, must be totally eliminated, totally plucked out, along with all its root system, then today we are in a position to see where not a single boy or a single child is suffering from polio. It's your contribution for which the whole India is grateful to you, for which I also thank you immensely from my personal level. So you are already into the process of serving the society in various ways. Please make this your innate culture, a natural culture for any Rotary man. What is it? He lives not in one body, he lives in multiple bodies, looking beyond. In fact, your real I, the Atma, is spread into unlimited bodies. It has spread itself into everything, living or non-living, in the whole creation. But what limits you to your own psychophysical entity is your ego. And fortunately for us, ego is something that is delusory. Ego doesn't exist. Indian Vedanta very clearly puts it. It doesn't exist. Even very recently, about 50, 60 years ago, or about 100 years ago, the British psychiatrists, psychologists have very much experimented upon that, and they have brought out certain conclusions that are absolutely in concurrence with Vedantic truths about the nature of this ego. They also say it is a delusory entity. It doesn't have an actual existence. It doesn't have a verifiable existence. It is a delusion. Delusion is playing such a miracle. Delusion is playing such a mischief. Yes, delusion can play mischief. If you mistake a rope to a snake, you can understand how much of misery will be caused in you, how you will be disturbed, how you will be tormented. A rope is mistaken for a snake. In Vedanta, we come across this example, this illustration. A rope is mistaken for a snake. What an amount of imbalance immediately will take place in your psychophysical entity. Delusion. Delusion in terms of the reality, but in terms of the consequence, it is real. A delusion which is unreal can cause consequences which are very much real. Delusion also has got some power. It is not powerless. So we are all suffering from the limitation because we are more inclined towards our ego than our real I, the Atman. That we call as Maya. In Indian Vedanta, we call as Maya. We have to overcome that. The moment you overcome this attraction for that ego, you start slowly but increasingly realizing the absolute nature of you in terms of existence, knowledge and bliss. How to do it? Go for entering into other minds. Try to understand the other minds also. Your own brothers, they have their own minds. Your sisters, your friends, people around, people in your city, people in your street, people in your country, people all over the world. Each one has got his own mind. They have their own ups and downs. They have their own disturbances. They have their own joys. Please take part in their joys and in their miseries. Share their joys and share their miseries. This is service. The greatest service, remember, is not in the form of a material. Material service, materialistic service rather, is not the only form of service. It's not that you have to give free medicine to some patient. Not that you have to bring about a school for some children. Not that you have to feed a hungry mouth. Well, marvelous. They are all very good things. They are all service in their highest definition. But beyond that also, there is one form of service which anyone and everyone can sincerely and from wholeheartedness perform. And that is, please wish good to others. Try to share the lots of others. Wipe out every tear from every eye. Whenever an opportunity knocks at your door, that you can share the misery of a man, at least a word of sympathy will go a long way in liberating him from the shackles of that misery. When something good happens to some people in your own home, in the neighborhood, also enjoy. Join them in enjoying that incident. Join them in enjoying that marvelous development that has brought a fresh air of vigor and joy into their lives. Participate. Wholeheartedly you participate. You be one with many around. This is how you can enter into the other minds. What will be the outcome of it? You think the man whom you are serving will be highly benefited more than the man whom you are serving, more than the man whose miseries and joys you are sharing. 100 times more than that, you will be benefited because your I will expand. Your consciousness will expand. The consciousness of the I will expand. This is called as psycho-social evolution. You start evolving. This is the only way whereby a human being can evolve. We all have heard of Darwin's theory of evolution. Amoeba is a unicellular organism. It has got only one cell. And corresponding to that, it has got its own miseries and joys, its own glory, it has got status. And it elevates itself in the scale of evolution, becomes a multicellular organism, later it becomes a small creature, a reptile, a bird, then a tetrapod, then ultimately it becomes a human being. Corresponding to every level of evolution, there is a type of glory. The glory is in direct correspondence, it is direct proportion with the level of evolution. More you are evolved, more glorious you will become. Amoeba can come up to the human stage by changing its body for achieving this evolution. Evolution and metamorphic change in the body structure, they go hand in gloves. From amoeba up to human being. At human stage, beyond that human stage, the body changes will not take place. The physiological process will stop. The physiological metamorphosis to bring about that evolution that is very much needed will stop. From there onwards, the sort of the evolution that man undergoes is always psycho-social evolution. The body will not change. The body of the lowest human being and the body of the highest human being remain one and the same. I can give the example of Veerappan and Vivekananda here. Observe the physiological structure of a Veerappan and observe that of the great Swami Vivekananda. Physiologically, they appear the same. Then where does the difference occur? The difference is in the mind. Because at human level, evolution is psycho or psyche. Psyche-social evolution. Psycho-social evolution. Psycho-social evolution can come only when your psycho or your psyche expands. Psyche, individual, becomes psyche, social. As long as you are an individual psyche, you are a limited being. The day you start the process of making this individual psyche expand into a larger psyche and further expand into a psyche that can enter into the multiple psyches, multiple bodies, and achieve the universal expansion in this process, remember, you are on the right track of evolution and your ability will grow, your intellectual powers will grow, everything that is excellent, to put it in the language of Vivekananda, will grow in you, and that is how ultimately you will be more benefited by making your psyche expand into other psyches than the people into whose psyche you have entered and thereby you have delivered some goods to them in your own way. Therefore, it is he who gives the benefit that is 100 times more benefited than the real beneficiary. India understood this long ago. Western sciences have understood only about 50 years ago or 60 years ago. Long ago, India understood this. We see in Bhagavatam a great saint getting the darshan of the Lord through his tapasya. Lord presents himself before him and asks for a boon. He says, Natvaham kamaye rajyam, na swargam, na punarbhavam, kamaye dukkhataptanam, praninamartinasham. Oh Lord, I don't want birth in a great family. I don't want to be the ruler of a great kingdom. I don't want to be able to go to any heavens of my wish. But I only want that the sufferings of the people, sufferings of the beings around may come to an end. Let all the suffering human beings, all suffering beings may come out of their sufferings and remain in that realms of joy. Vivekananda re-emphasized this in modern period. While he had stayed in the palace of Mysore for some time, in the course of conversation with the Maharaja of Mysore, at that time he says, you must look upon your citizens as your own children. Prince, they alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than alive. Why? In the days of Kruta Yuga itself, India made this as a great national policy. In Bhagavatam, we come across this. Maharshi Kapila, who is one of the incarnations of Lord Vishnu, while talking to his mother Devahuti asked him to suggest one way of adoring Lord. How to adore the Supreme Lord? She puts that question. How to adore the Supreme Lord, the indwelling self in all beings? How to please Him, how to adore Him? What is the best method for adoring the Lord? Kapila comes out with a beautiful answer. He says, Athamam sarveshu bhuteshu bhutatmanam kutalayam arhayet danamanabhyam maitrya abhinnena chakshusha. O mother, I am the incarnation of that Supreme Lord. I dwell in all the hearts. Athamam sarveshu bhuteshu. As the indwelling spirit in every being. Consider me as the indwelling spirit in every being, in every body, human body or any other body. Consider me as indwelling spirit in every body. Athamam sarveshu bhuteshu bhutatmanam krutalayam arhayet dana manabhya maitrya abhinnena chakshusha. In a mood of reverence, with all love, with all reverence, serve me. That is the indwelling spirit in all beings. How? Through mana and dana. Honor me and give me always something in charity. Oh mother, if you simply go on giving in charity whatever that you have with you to the needy people around, considering them as the repositories of the great Supreme Spirit itself, with all that sense of honor, not treating them as people who are in need of something and therefore you are at a very high pedestal, you can give them something, not in that egoistic mode. Counting the man whom you are serving as the repository of that indwelling Supreme Spirit itself, in a mood of devotion, in a mood of love, in a mood of honor, whatever you have, you give him. That will be the highest form of worship. That is the principal way, the most dominant or predominant way, or the supreme way, a highly cherishable, highly appreciated way, whereby you can have the grace of Lord. Your worship in that form will be the best form of worship. That will be the best sort of worship. This we come across in Bhagavatam itself. During that time, Krishna emphasizes upon this, Buddha emphasizes upon this, Shankaracharya emphasizes Shankaracharya. In fact, he calls upon everyone to look only Brahman everywhere. There is no human being. Your Atman itself is Brahman, and that Brahman is indwelling everywhere. What you call as this creation, it's false. You can't call it as creation. Lord itself, Ishavasya Upanishad also emphasizes upon this. Ishavasya sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Try to see the Lord in each and everything in the creation. Yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Even in the most trivial things, most trivial things, try to see Lord. All through our tradition, all through our philosophy of life, we see this one important note that is emphasized again and again. What is it? Look upon every fellow being as your own self, but encased in a different psycho-physiological setup. Your own self has occupied the place in various other bodies. Body may be different, but the self inside and the self in your own being, they are one and the same. The self in me is the self everywhere. Therefore, India did not go to emphasize upon universal brotherhood. Our philosophy is not universal brotherhood. Our philosophy is universal selfhood. Not only that, I must consider every other person as a brother, I must consider every other person as my own self, but differently manifested. Here it is one type of manifestation, in other places it is a different type of manifestation. Substance is one and the same, the thing is one and the same, but manifestation is different. Always we must see the substance and not the manifestation. Manifestation is always subjected to conditions, but the truest reality, the reality of all realities, is the substance inside which is beyond all conditions. So when you apply this philosophy to the human beings around, because of different conditions in which they have got different manifestation of the same self which is in me, of which I am also one of the manifestations. So I cannot differentiate myself from anyone. If I live in the spirit, remember, everybody will become mine. This is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole world is one family. This is the basis, the logical basis that was provided by Indian philosophers for practicing this morality, this great moral value, that is, no one is an outsider. Everyone is your own. Sri Mata Sharada Devi used to say, don't try to find fault with anyone, because nobody is a stranger here. Everyone is your own self. Don't find fault with anyone. If at all you want to find fault with anyone, find fault with you only. But don't find fault with anyone, because nobody is a stranger. Everyone is your own self. All through the utterances, the writings, the teachings of these great sages of India, we see this great note. And what is that? You see your own self in all others. When you are able to see your own self in all others, you are looking beyond yourself. Whatever activity you do, that becomes service. Service is not, remember, interpreted in terms of the action that is being done. It is interpreted more scientifically in terms of the attitude in which the work is done. You may be in a position to give only one chocolate to a poor boy. That is very much. On the other hand, in an egoistic mode, as though you are the supreme entity and everybody is at your mercy, in that mode, whatever you may give, that cannot be counted as service. That becomes just an ego trip. It is an exercise for your ego to fatten itself, but that can never have that sublime name service. Therefore, service has to do more with the attitude rather than the nature of the act itself. Let us cultivate this. It is a training. We cannot achieve it in a day or two, but gradually, regularly, we can definitely do it, and we can make it an integral part of our own nature. So, my dear Rotary friends, already you are into this culture. I need not train you up, or I need not even hint you at any new thing that you need to adopt into your lives. You are adepts in that. You are already stalwarts in that. I only making use of this opportunity to share the thoughts which you also can enjoy, and therefore I found it as an opportunity, and for that opportunity I thank Dr. Girish Masurkar and all the Rotary fraternity from the bottom of my heart. Wish you all the best. Please take care. Your health is very precious, because you are not the sort of the people who have got any selfish purposes in life. You are living for others. Your health is a national asset. Please take care of your health, and may you live long, and may your venture always meet with tremendous success. Thank you so much.